Ken Campbell,
The Seekers Podcast.
Walk about, snell, spit, day long, lies one, half one, belong, everyone, something, bugger up, dead, finish yet, time.
Greetings, Seekers, and hilarious.
welcome to Ken Campbell, The Seekers Podcast, hosted by me, Daisy Campbell, Ken's daughter, and David Bramwell.
Ken Campbell was one of a kind. An unconventional performer, wordsmith, theatre director, comedian, trickster and creative powerhouse. For this unique series, we'll be plundering Ken's archive to bring you the best recordings of his one-man shows, as well as other selected treats.
This is The Recollections of a Furtive Nudist, Part 2.
I mean, sometimes one does desire the vanishment of another. Like, for example, you're setting out on a railway journey and, you've got the little table all to yourself, and some dick comes along and says, are any of these seats taken? Just say this. No, there's just me and Jesus. In the interval, 15 years rolled by. It was about 3 years ago, I found a new bit of London. Well, it was probably always there, but I didn't know about it. It's in the valley beneath Stamford Hill. And it's like a reservoir district. And I just want to take you on a little walk along the towpath of the River Lee. Tottenham would be up there. You've got the rugby pitch here, and there's narrow boats here, some neighbours who live on the boats, and there's a marina just across there, and then there's the rowing club, and then there's the Rowing Club Cafe, also known as George's Cafe. And there's been a cafe for about 90 years, and the first time I went inside, I thought, Christ, this was so like the Valentine's Tennis and Social Club at Gants Hill Clubhouse. My dad had been secretary of the place when I was about 7. And I'll tell you what, in there they were selling these same post-war cakes that I hadn't seen for 40 years. And I don't know if you know them, they're these little puff pastry jobs with icing sugar on the top and little noodles of coconut embedded in it and something a wee bit sinister in the middle. Those there. And I don't know, I think I just went back for a moment and for a moment I was 7 again and I was playing on the floor of the Valentine's Clubhouse. My father was doing whatever he had to do in this enormous tome. He had to fill things in it. And there were just 2 other club members in. There was a man in his 30s, balding a bit, and he was teaching a new lady member how to play darts. And he was exciting her with this piece of information, that you don't throw the dart as you'd think with a point pointing towards the board, no, but with a point pointing downwards. And he threw off his 3 demonstration darts. He went to get them out the board, and she went, oh, what, like that? And when he turned round, he looked like a Red Indian. Darting it. And the lady shrieked out, but he didn't see the freaking thing. And my father looked up and he shoved the shrieking woman into the ladies' changing room, and he said to the guy, he said, just sit down there for a moment. He said, you've had a bit of an accident. Don't touch your head. You know? And the ambulance came round, and under medical supervision, they removed the dart. And the guy was fine. I say that, actually he was subject to occasional winking fits. Also in George's Cafe, you'd be like to encounter a great old timer, Ken Kelly. Ken Kelly is the only man who actually has a permit to live on his boat. And that's because his time on the Lee goes way back before the marina and all that nonsense. Listen, Ken Kelly can recall the brothel boats of the Lee. He does so most mornings over the breakfast. Anyway, we're out round to the cafe now, and we're not going to go across by the bridge by the rowing club, that little footbridge there. We're going to carry on along the towpath, and we're going to go over the other little iron footbridge. And then we'd be on Walthamstow Marshes. Anyway, I was going over that bridge almost every day, and I'll tell you why, because my little old mongrel dog, Werner, she had a commission. And her commission was to get all the overnight crap out of this particular pond. No other pond would do her. And you didn't have to throw anything in or anything. She just goes straight in and get all the cans and crap out. And I'll tell you something, actually. That pond was formed overnight by a doodle bug, just like me. Strange, anyway, there are. And anyway, therefore, I may well have been the first of the lurkers of the marshes to spot that the authorities had stuck up for us this picnic table and benches. Well, I wasn't that thrilled with it, to be honest. But I used to pass it every day, never saw anyone sitting at it. And then one morning I sat at it. I thought, I know why they've put this here. It's to be my office. Yeah, and it was the first of that incredibly good weather we'd been having. It's marvellous, isn't it? We've shot all this pollution up into the sky, and the result is terrific weather. It's a shame to waste it, isn't it? And I thought, yeah, I mean, with the invention of the cell net telephone, I mean, do we need the walls anymore? Do we need the ceilings? Christ, this is a social invention. Oh, wow, and I couldn't wait to be interviewing people in my Marsh office, God. I must get back into big-time theatre production again. I couldn't wait for all the actors and actresses writing to me, stage management and that, wanting jobs and everything like that, interviewing them in the Marsh office. Here's how I'd go about it. I'd send them the relevant page of the London A to Z, marking off George's Cafe. They could go there. No one to meet them. You know, they could have a cup of tea, chance it up with one of the cakes if they wish. And in would come Ken Kelly. Right, any thespians here? Oh, come with me. And you'd have to get in Ken Kelly's boat now. He'd ship you up the Lee and he'd moor under the bridge there. Hey, look round, oh no, he doesn't seem to be needing you yet. He'd scarp at the 9 or so cats from the teapot. There'd be some danger he's going to make you a cup of tea now. In the office, I let off a 506 naval distress flare. Whoosh! Oh, he's calling for you now! Get Kelly out with his machete! And he hacks a new path through the Walthamstow marsh grasses, and then you get your first glimpse of me now, swinging deals on my cell net. Be with you in a moment. The thing is, you'd get all this together, wouldn't you? And then it'd piss down. Anyway, the answer, though, seemed to be all the way along the banks of the Lee. What I needed was one of these enormous fisherman's umbrellas. George said to go to Don's Fishing Tackle Emporium in Edmonton. And I thought, Christ, maybe it's incredible the gear that fishermen are into. I was looking around, and then this voice said, yes. I said, I want an enormous fisherman's umbrella, please. Is it a 48 or a 51? I said, I'm not really actually into fishing at all. I said, it's just that I've got an office on the marshes and I'm worried the pages might get wet. He said, very healthy, the outdoors. I said, is there a difference in price between the 48s and the 51s? He said, yes. He said, the 48s are cheaper because the 51s are bigger. And anyway, the whole rack of them. I said, well, what's this? Is this a 48, is it? He said, yes. Just out the size of the cheaper variety. Yes, I think the 48 will do me. And I'm interested in this business here. Oh, I said, the prong arrangement, is that any longer on the 51s? He said, no. He said, the prong arrangement is uniform on all models. I said, how much is this? He said, £28. And I saw another one that had a £10 sticker on it. I said, this is a £10 one. I said, is that a 48? He said, yes. He said, but that's nylon. I said, no. I said, what nylon's not as good as this? He said, well, no. He said, in a mighty deluge, you'll get a light mist under there. That's when I found these snappy little waistcoat jobs with the pockets on the pockets. This is just the job, isn't it? The guy's got an office on the Marsh. The size of this, you get the complete works of Fort in there. I said, well, I'll have one of these, and he said, and snot fur. What? Stop for what? No, he was referring to this here. You see, 'cause if you're in the outdoors, you know, both hands busy, your rod and tithing or whatever, you can... I found this rather more upmarket model. Actually, shortly after purchase, I got a good job. They let me direct the children's play at the National Theatre, and this was the jacket I preferred for that job, because the new man there, Richard Eyre, I thought he won't be wanting to bump into my bogeyed up old snot fur in the corridor, so I wore this one, because this has the snot fur tastefully battened down. Anyway, there was back in the office. There was just actually one drawback, I suppose, and that was I really couldn't think of or find anything, any subject, which was grand enough to warrant all this energy that I was putting into the interview situation. Well, I thought, well, sod it, let's just get on with the interviews, you know? I thought, wow, I mean, if you really put a lot of creative energy into the interview situation, you could likely throw the right applicant into the legendary awakened state, and they literally interview them, what it should be about, and everything else. But I thought, towards that, I could maybe brace the pockets on the pockets with some sort of light wood or plastic or some sort, and have drawers there, you know, like been filing in there, a chest of drawers. What I did though, it was not quite that, but I got my calculator here and measuring manhood in the old-fashioned way there, and that's my day stamp with a bit of cash here, and I got my regular stamps there, moistener, and then some labels and stuff. Oh, I've got my photos of loved ones. And I built a modest filofax system. Anyway, it seemed to me, Christ, the world theatre was at my feet now. You know, and then I was aware that I wasn't in a sense alone. Pretty boy tent ringer, aka the voice. I had the feel he was going to make an announcement, and he did. And he said no. I said, what? He said, no! I said, no? He said, no. He said, if you've got an office on the Marsh, you should do marsh business in it. God, I couldn't really tune to that. You know, I'm not sure that anything would have happened about that if it hadn't have been oddly cold one morning. And I just set out with the dog, like, God, the cold was eating the brain, and I had to return for my hat. But I couldn't find my hat. Then I found a hat. I didn't recall ever having entertained the owner of this hat, but I just sort of stuck it on and went out, dog did its commission in the pond, and I came back, and I was looking at myself in the mirror. I thought, I can't go out like this. I look like a smurf. I mean, someone's knitted this. It's a dolphin with a Christmas party hat on, shoving a banana up itself. And I thought, actually, I know who wears this hat. The man who does marsh business on the Marsh, he wears this hat. You know that phrase, thinking cap? Well, I think there might be some literal truth in this. I've noticed this, sometimes people will pick my hat up and they'll put it on. And if they do that, 9 times out of 10, their behaviour will be modified for the better. Also, when you think, when you're thinking, there's a measurable amount of electric energy being produced, and I guess some of it would lodge in hat grease. Anyway, I'll tell you this. I didn't take this hat off now, and this hat seemed to be taking me places. It found for me this funny little shop which specialised in very old bicycles, and we seemed to want this very old lady's bicycle. And then it found for me this little book boutique that only opened on Wednesday afternoons and sold odd books. And I bought The Sex Life of Flowers and also J.G. Ballard's Day of Creation. But it wasn't till it had me buy one of these, the very fine value these are, these Chinese notebooks. Once I had that, I sort of got the picture. I was to be the passive protagonist, you know. I'd be there in the Marsh office writing stuff, from time to time, subtly and peripherally entering people's lives, not to change them, but just sufficient to write about them. I got excited anyway. I said, right, tomorrow we start. It was a Sunday. I got up early, and it didn't Didn't look at all like rain. I thought I'm going to take the 48. And I extended a prong right out, and my books in my pocket, and I set off, and I felt terrific. Felt like a knight of old, you know. I had to go the long way round though, because I could only steer to the left. I got there and I set up and I started to write. The office, 7:23 a.m. Sunday. It may be the first day of spring. Man with 2 dogs carrying stick goes by. Birds twittering. Pigeon fluttering and briefly soaring. Dog asleep, or dozing rather, in the dewy grass clumps. And it was a lovely day, and the sun was streaming past my face, and I thought, you know, I look at the world through a hedge of my own creation. I'll just try something here, huh? That's terrific. I don't need glasses, just pegs. I don't want to trim them in any way, because sometimes I get these little jobs on telly playing somebody who's just invented something. And I'm flying legs against the table, just odd descriptions. I get down to here. And then I could write no more, because from out of the bushes just beyond the pond had stepped a young man whose body language was so alarming it would not have bypassed the eye muscles of an idiot. And he had with him this plastic bag containing some sort of weight of substance at the bottom of it. And he put his head in the bag and he sealed the bag round his head and he breathed in obscenely deeply, and then he pulled the bag away and he commenced kicking shit out of invisible people. And then he turned round and he saw me. And he roared. The pussy wart on his nose with what seemed to be a snapped-off cocktail stick stuck in it. And I put a good half mile between myself and the office. And I was off the bike and I was feeling my joints. I don't feel too bad. And there was a moment I had the 48 on my back. And I had to catch sight of my shadow. And something about it reminded me of the 7 Samurai. And I heard the samurai music. And I thought, okay, we shall return. So I was back at the office. And I noticed that the guy was lurking in the bushes. I decided not to write anymore, merely to pose as some bloke reading J.G. Ballard's Day of Creation. And when I say pose, I was just taking the sort of time it would take to get to the end of the page and turn it over. I'm now aware that the breather was in the office. He said, is that your book? I said, yes. He said, would you like to see where it writes about me? I said, yeah. I gave him the book. It seemed it was a book he knew well. And he turned it over and then he pointed to this name here, Chad. C-H-A-D. I said, really, that's your name, is it? He said, yeah. This is the sentence. Why not go to the Sudan or Chad? Anyway, Chad became my first regular client in the office. Always with his bag of substance. Another morning he said to me, he said, I'm going to take you to the filter beds. And I don't know what he meant at all. Anyway, it involved going a long way now up the tow path of the River Lee. We got to the Lee Bridge of Lee Bridge Road. We went underneath that. Then we crossed over the bridge by the weir, and then we were walking past a very high old Victorian wall, wrought iron gates, then more high Victorian wall, and then we were around the back, and we broke in through concrete fencing, and then we were in the abandoned filter beds. And let me tell you what these things are. They are enormous swimming baths full of vegetation and foliage. I said, Chad, why have you brought me here? Anyway, it's impossible then. He got the gift of tongues, you know. tempting EO speech or something. And but I was to inquire into what exactly these things were. Evidently, they'd been engineered back in 1820 following a cholera epidemic, and they were a system of filtering London's water before it got to the pumps and the taps. In fact, it had been in use up till 20 years ago, and then it had simply been abandoned. But when it was abandoned, they must have left a different amount of silt and gubbins at the bottom of each of these enormous swimming baths, because in each of them you have an utterly different category of flora and vegetation. For example, in swimming bath number 1, you've got every known sort of rushweed and bulrush. Enormous swimming bath number 2 is a bit like a seaside. Number 3 has got strange grass which surrounds an evil Limpopo lagoon. I'm going to take you now down into enormous swimming bath number 4. Down there you find luminous green young sapling growth and an intertwinement of vine. And it was down in that one, down into there. I used to return often with the dog, and down there I found the exact location of that dream. And this thought came, that dream was many years ago. At the time of that dream, this would have been underwater. Seekers, let's get on. I want to deal with the big case as fully as time will allow. I was in the Marsh office, and over the bridge she came. She had a very clean lacy white top on. She had a red miniskirt, black tights, very high-heeled red shoes. She had long black hair. She was originally from Taiwan, and maybe her name should have been something of a warning. Emma May Wang. And the first thing she said was, I was told I'd find you here in your hat. The case. That since 1984, Miss Emma May Wang has been writing. She's been writing a novel about nurses and songs, only to find that these things are coming out on the radio very often the next day after composition. Is, she wants to know, her phone being bugged? Well, I said, Miss Wang, I do actually know a little bit about the bugging of phones. I said, it's well to remember this: if there is a bug on your phone, it will make of your receiver a listening ear at all times, not just when you're having a telephone conversation. She said, can they read thoughts? I said, no, I don't think there's a bug invented that could read thoughts. I said, there might be a bug invented that could monitor brain waves. I said, I think all you get then is wavy lines on graph paper around a drama. So I hardly thought you could deduce a novel about nurses from it. I said, look, I'll tell you what I think is going on here. I said, you're working hard on your lyrics, you're honing down a phrase or something, and then next day you hear something similar on the radio, and you say, hey, that was mine. She said, no, she didn't think it was that. I said, well, I don't know then. I said, maybe you're precognitive. I said, maybe you actually are able to foretell what will be on the radio next day. She said, no, she didn't think it was that either. She wanted to know my opinion as to whether it might have something to do with when she'd been made redundant as a nurse and decided to write this novel about nursing, that she'd told a certain detective inspector in Longton of her decision to write. Wowzers. I said, well, so what? I mean, what's this certain detective inspector in Longton? What's he so worried about that you're going to be writing about that he's going to put this bug on your telephone night and day? I said, what's your vision of this constabulary in Longton? This guy there, hey, quiet everybody, she's humming again, He's got to get the hang of your song, do they? And then whoosh, they all go off to this recording studio, and he's got to get it all waxed, and then off to the local DJ. They've got a sinister hold over him. Get it out! Oh, it's ludicrous. Well, anyway, she said, well, it's been going on for years, she said. And all her friends tell her to give up writing, because obviously there's no point in it if the stuff's coming out on the radio the very next day. No. I said, no, yeah. I said, well, look, I'm not sure whether your friends have given you the best advice there, Miss Wang. I said, why don't you put aside your novel about nurses for a bit and your songs? I said, what you're talking to me about here? I said, I think this is a real great subject. I said, if you're fantasizing all this, I said, it's of interest. I said, if you are precognitive, it's very much of interest. And I said, if anything's going on like you think's going on, you want to keep chapter and verse and everything. Keep all the detail. I mean, you could really be in big money with it. Well, anyway, she lived in Stoke-on-Trent, you see, but she was quite often in London, and she used to come and visit me, and I'll tell you something. She loved those cakes at George's, you know, like they were made for her. And sometimes it's on her second one, and she says, "Have you got a Black & Decker drill?" I said, "Yes." She said, "With a 7/8 inch diameter drill bit?" I said, "Well, possibly, yeah, why?" She said she was having problems with her shelving. And she said, really what would be best if I could go back with her to her home in Stoke-on-Trent and help her with her shelving. I said, "Well, no, I don't think I can do that." I said, "No, I can't actually." I said, "Because I'm so busy." I said, "No, you wouldn't appreciate I'm busy because I put all the hours I can into the office." I said, "But, you know, I'm writing scripts myself, actually." "No, so it's not possible," I said, and then I. Listen, I've come to the opinion that we are composed of at least dual personalities, and it's perfectly likely that one I will be holding steadfast to the concept, "No way," and over here another I say, "Except maybe for a couple of days." Anyway, there we are now on the train, and I've got my little bag of tools there. One bit was of interest. It turned out she thought there were two of us. That sometimes she'd been talking to my cousin or somebody. A little bit deflected by that. And then in the taxi from the station, it was clear that she saw lampposts as sexually depraved authority figures. And we were in a little terraced house in Stoke. And it was somewhat alike in layout and its furnishings my parents' old place that they had in Ilford in the war. Anyway, it was clear to Emma May Wang that while she'd been in London, there'd been a break-in. And that it was her opinion that the BBC, certain people from Channel 4, the local constabulary, had broken in there and they'd inserted fast-breeding phosphorus machines into the ceilings. And there was now a rain of invisible but deadly particles. Anyway, she cooked a little stir-fry meal for us, and she did it under a parasol. And to be on the safe side, we ate it under the table. And she said, if people's eyes come out, can they be put back? I said, no. She said, well, I heard they could. And I said, well, no, they can't. And then she left her under the table, she left the room, and she came back with a phrenology head. And she asked me to find on her area of hope. And I said, well, it's right here, Emma. And I pointed to her hair, and I said, just here. And she said, people's heads never just fall off, do they? I said, it's not possible we could get on with the shelves now, is it? I'll get the last train out. No. She was off with my tools now. Evidently something had to be prepared first, but I was bad enough to stay down there. She was going up the stairs. I don't know what I was meant to be doing meanwhile. I said, oh wait, well, where's your radio then? She'd thrown it out because it had started to address her directly. When I, like you do, I was sort of poking about, and one drawer was full of feathers, and another drawer had large format photographs in it, and they were mainly photographs of beaches and some were of deserts, I think. And sometimes there'd be writing on them, maybe a line out of her lyrics or something. Like, when's the time for coming home? The years fly by like fruit gums. In May I wear my orange coat. And I know I was hearing buzzing coming from upstairs. I thought, she's probably getting on with the shelving. Perhaps I meant to join her. But I got attracted by what seemed to be a wooden feather. And actually it wasn't a wooden feather. And you can see this at the back there. It was an erotic statuette. This is a crouching red man in green trousers. And he's actually reaching right up into the nevers of this long black-haired goddess. And then I looked round, and there was Miss Emma May Wang. She was at the bottom of the stairs. Well, she was smiling uncharacteristically. And beautifully, chirpily, like a young girl who's just scored a goal at a hockey match. And next day, there's love is now being made at the bottom of the stairs in a standing position. And this tress of black hair, it really was a charge of a moment, I must say. And then I thought, maybe, though, it could even really be topped, if this was all going on, maybe on that sofa there, that sofa so like my old mum and dad's. And then I saw that I was looking at blood. And coming out of the blood was wire. Anyway, I had a flash as to what had happened probably up there. Was that with the drill that she'd trepanned herself, that she'd made a hole in her hope, fixing her own shelving. But what to make of this wire? It looked like some old aerial. Maybe an aerial or something. I said, you just sit down there. I said, you've had a bit of an accident. Telephone number of the hospital. I said, don't touch your head. See, what is this? What was this wire, though? I mean, had she been so missing her radio that she was making experiments in direct reception? And, didn't like to look at it too much. It did funny things to my teeth. I got hold of the hospital, and they were only sending out ambulances on emergencies. I said, well, look, this is a lady who has just bored a hole in her head. And she said, can she walk? I said, I don't know, maybe she can walk. She said, find out if she can walk, he'll give us a ring back. And apparently the hospital was only up the hill. And I found a taxi firm, but they've got no taxis. So I thought, well, I don't know, well, maybe she can walk, actually. Yeah, she was fine, she could walk. So I tidied her up a bit, and I was holding her gently but firmly because I didn't want to spill her. And I stepped out into the night. It's one of those nights where you can hear a lot of wind, but you don't feel any. And we are now going up the hill, and I had heavy black shoes on, and I thought these are clumping her. And so I took them off at the heel, and I just simply bunged them over someone's hedge. And we carried on up, me and my socks. And then we were passing the church, and I was surprised to hear a congregation in there, and it was late, lustily singing a hymn, and there was a little catch in it. I thought, that's not a congregation, that's a lonely vicar playing his records. And I'd give that as the moment of realising that I'd fallen in love with Emma May Wang. I mean, I was all right about the aerial at that moment. It wasn't an aerial, it was a feather. I mean, so the plumes and the barbs had been blown on the wind. Anyway, we get into the hospital, and we're seen commendably quickly now. She actually said no word from the bottom of the stairs all the way up the hill, but really it's nice young doctor. She was able to speak really quite lucidly, and she said, you see, that she'd had this thought, maybe more of a feeling, that she hadn't got any brain. And she thought, well, let's just get this worry out of the way one way or another. So she bored the hole in her head, and then she felt in with coat hanger wire. She was so happy to have found there was a load of stuff in there. And so pleased to be with somebody who knew what he was doing, who could get it out for her, because you never know the sort of damage you can do playing about like this. About 3 weeks later, I was in this, it's a really good pub actually, the Anchor and Hope, it's along the Lee. Anyway, I was talking to this medical chap there who knew Emma a bit. He said, well, where did she do it? Well, I said, well, right here, the area of hope. He said, wow. He said, well, she got it right, he said, not so long ago when they used to do that operation a lot, he said, actually, they had a lot of success with it. He said, no, he said, she could have done herself a favour there. He said, no, the mistake is the coat hanger wire. Well, the whole thing was that I had to spend more than a couple of days in Stoke. Oh. Then, in the crematorium chapel, there were just three neighbours, and there was this guy. I don't know who he was. I mean, he might have been the certain detective inspector from Longton. Then in came the very cheery man, Frank Bailey, the funeral director, and he gave me this plastic bag. Oh, I'd asked him if I could have a lock of Emma's hair. Kind enough to give me all that. And this is what happens. They play the organ, and then these doors open themselves, and the casket trundles itself towards gas jets. Before it reaches them, the doors close themselves. And there was no one at all to stop me, so I just took with me the statuette. And on the train back to London, I got it out, but it didn't seem the sort of thing that you should be seen with on a train. So I had it well under the table. You know how if you see a good movie or if you see a good play and you really get into it, you'd actually sort of understand a character. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure at all whether you can understand a human being. I mean, especially if the human being is yourself. But I don't know. It was holding the statuette. I felt I got an inkling of understanding of what maybe I'd really been doing in Stoke-on-Trent. Something like this, that I'd been seeking my redemption from a Red Indian phantasm lady. And as to whether with her brief and curious incarnation I had received it, I think that's very much open to doubt. Anyway, when I was back in London, I'll tell you what I did. I went into George's cafe, and I bought one of those cakes, and it was a sort of like a ritual. I ate the whole thing through. And then I went off to the pub, and I spent the whole night in the pub. And then on the way back, at Watermint Quay, these flats, they attempt to lock away the dustbins there, not all that successfully, because I encountered Chad in there. It seems he was living in there. But sadly, he'd now mutated into his own mother. And he got this woman's coat on. He was saying, oh, look, will you look at his shoes? Will you look at the state of that boy's shoes? Well, indeed, his shoes were in a sorry state. I said, don't worry, Chad, just hang on here. And he lived round the corner. I said, I'll sort your shoes out. And I went back home. I had intended to bring him 10 quid, you know. I didn't think he could nip up to the spastic charity shop with that and get himself a decent pair of shoes, I thought. But I found myself going back with £200 in £10 notes. And I went in round the bins and I showed him all the money. And I said, but this is for that. And I took from him his plastic bag of substance. And I gave him the money, and then I said, I don't mean just for this. I said, this is forever. Do you understand me? It seems maybe he did. He went behind the bins, and he found for me it's an oil painting. Flowers in a blue vase. Gave me that. Anyway, then in front of his gaze, I slung his bag of substance into the Lee. And I went home, and I couldn't reason with why I didn't feel better about it all. I mean, I'd given him all that money, and I'd taken his substance from him. I'd taken his substance from him. I'd taken his substance from him. That suddenly had a very dark ring to it. And it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, but I was back round the bins, but he'd gone. The next day I put in a full day in the office, but he didn't show up, nor the next day either. In fact, I never saw him again. Unless I did. It was outside George's cafe. Ken Kelly was having further adventures of the brothel boating days. And I said, "Shut a minute." I said, "Kelly," I think there's a body going by. Well, he went and looked in, and it might have been a body. You can really tell, if it was a body, it had a curious part of itself uppermost, you know. Watch this thing as it floated on under the bridge. A couple of days later, George said, he said, "Oh, you said you were right." He said, "That was a body." He said, "They fished it out at Old Ford Lock." I said, "What happens to a body if it's fished out at Old Ford Lock?" He said, "Well, it would go to Hackney Mortuary." In Hackney Mortuary, the guy said, "How well did you know your missing person?" I said, "Well, I'd met him on several occasions." He said, "So you wouldn't be able to make a positive identification with the body alone?" What do you mean? I mean, have I got to go down there on my own? Whatever. That wasn't his meaning. What he meant was without the head. I said, what's up the head then? I said, it's gone to Farringdon. He said, well, it happens, he said. He said, I'll give you the address if you want it. And so that was what I was doing now in Farringdon, N. Evans Associates. And I was in luck. It was closed. Maybe they were taking an early lunch. Maybe they get all the heads sorted by Wednesday. Anyway, I thought, I'll sod it now. Anyway, it came the Saturday, and I really felt I needed to cheer myself up. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll go to Dingwall's Market at Campbell and I always used to love it there. And I found myself going past a stall, which I'd always normally stop at, which is the stall of wooden ties. That's quite beautifully carved front and back, hand carved by P.C. Slade, the whittling constable of credit and debit. Anyway, as I say, I went past the stall, but the carving copper came running after me, and he stuck one of his ties on me. He didn't want any money for it. He'd seen me on the television, and he assumed that I met important people, and he got me to have one of his ties. Well, and that's all. As a matter of fact, I felt like a fully paid up member of the Dick Society. I've had enough now. And I was now around the back of the La Routier restaurant, just see really the last part of the market through the trellis work. Was just the edge of an objet de crap store. The canal there with a lock, actually. And then I noticed that I wasn't alone. There was a man, I suppose in his mid-20s, sort of quite good looking. And he had this cut-down white shirt on, the sort of job that you'd play Hamlet in. And he said, "Have you ever been in love?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Have you ever fallen in love with such intensity that you knew that what you had to do was just to possess somebody?" I said, "Well, there's something like that, possibly, yeah." He put out his hand, he said, "I'm Noddy." I put my hand in his, he was squeezing it very, very hard. He said, "What's your name?" I said, "Ken." He said, "Why aren't you talking to me, Kenneth? Did you think you'd found a safe place at last?" I said, "Why did you squeeze my hand so hard?" He said, "Because I wanted you to feel my skin, my flesh." He said, "I want you to feel my heart." He took my hand and he put it inside his shirt. And he said, "It's pumping very hard, isn't it? Very fast." Well, I said, "Well, yes." He said, "But it's not love, though." He said, "It's hate, the real thing." He said, "Here's what's going to happen here." He said, "We're just going to hang around until whatever it is will well up inside me, and whatever has to be done will do itself. I am merely to be the agent," said he. Well, I've done a course on how to be a more remarkable person. And one of the tips we got is that if you're with a dangerous customer, you should spot which side of the face is the weaker side. And you should be looking with both your eyes intently into the eye of the weaker side. Well, I've been doing this actually for some time with Noddy. It's funny thing, if you're only looking in one place, you do have quite a periphery of vision. And I've just been hoping that somebody I knew, and then please really just anybody would step into this periphery. But nobody had. All I was aware of was the edge of the objet de crap stall. And dangling from it was what I'd taken to be a cloth mushroom. But then it was caught in the breeze and it turned around. It wasn't a cloth mushroom. It was a little oriental doll lady. Although that's probably my only hope now, that Miss MMA Wang is pleading my cause on some other plane. Anyway, Noddy was continuing. He said, "You put people into compartments, don't you?" I said, "Well, sometimes." He said, "Which of your compartments are you putting me in?" I said, "I haven't got a compartment ready for you yet." He said, "Are you acquainted with the music of Wagner?" And at that moment it was like pandemonium in the head, and through all the cacophony that was going on in there, like a riot in a telephone exchange or something, I heard from the voice, and the voice said, spear him.
And here I hold aloft my wooden tie.
And I stabbed him into the canal. and then when I got back home, I thought, I think I'd better get out of London now. I thought, I know, I'll go to Liverpool. I'll go see my friends in Liverpool now. And I thought, no, I can't go to Liverpool because the train goes through Stoke-on-Trent. I thought, yeah, well, I'll go to Paddington. I couldn't think what all places you might go to from Paddington. And I thought, well, if I don't know where I'm going, then nobody else will either. And so coming up from the tube, first thing I saw was the statue of Isambard Kingdom Brunel, looking, it seems, askance at the latest engineering feat, the 9-seater plastic pod arrangement. So that 9 people can all sit at once on the same seat and no chance of meeting. I took a lonely seat on the pod and I looked at the menu of possibilities where I might go, and then past platform 8, the taxi queue, and heading the taxi queue was Andy Jones. Why, hey, Andy! And I went running over to him, but by the time I got near there, he'd disappeared, I suppose, into a taxi. And then I'm passing the cars that are parked slantwise, ready to go up the slip road, and it seemed to me that I was passing my old mauve Marina. I couldn't remember the number of that old thing. It might have been it. Anyway, I noticed that they'd left the key in the ignition. Anyway, then I was back on the pod, looking through, and I read through all the places that I might go to 3 times. And I found it very depressing reading. Oh yeah, there were a lot of places, but really no place to go to. I thought maybe that little sighting of Andy Jones, maybe that's the tip. I thought maybe I should disappear. And as I said that, I thought, actually I know how it's done. And at that moment I was clear. It was clear in my mind's eye, the opening page of Charles Fort's Low. A naked man in a city street, hyphen. The track of a horse in volcanic mud, hyphen. The mystery of reindeer's ears, hyphen. And the hyphens were beginning to lift off the page. A huge black form like a whale in the sky, and it drips red drops as if attacked by celestial swordfishes, hyphen. This time the hyphen was now starting to point towards me. Showers of frogs and blizzards of snails, gushes of periwinkles down from the sky. I thought, I know. When it points at you, that's when you go. And then I heard from the voice, and the voice said, don't you think there are 1 or 2 items you should pay for before you leave here? I said, what do you mean? He said, wouldn't it be better if you had a punishment here? Well, take a little bag of belongings and go down into the gentleman's public lavatory. He said, go down in there and go into whichever cubicle seems to summon you, and put your little bag of belongings onto the WC pedestal, take all your clothes off, pile them up on top of the case, and then set light to it all in 3 places, and then steal the Marina. Yeah. I said, well, then I'll cheer up, will I? The boy said, I think there's a chance. I said, tell me, are you inside me or outside me? And the boy said, I'm not going to tell you. The boy said, I'll tell you if you do it. So that's how come I was now going past the croissant shop and the bureau de change, and then parked outside the gentleman's lavatory, which is situated just by the tie rack, was an electric courtesy vehicle with a driver on it. Anyway, round him and then down into the convenience. And I'll tell you what it's like down there. It's all red. There's a red floor, red ceilings, red cubicles. And now I'm inside a cubicle. Did it summon me? I'm not sure. Maybe it did, because there are a pair of black shoes in rather good nick by the WC pedestal. Anyway, I put the thing down, taking my clothes off. Someone asked the other night, what happened to those shoes that I'd thrown over the hedge in Stoke? I said, well, I don't know. I was never able to find them, actually. What I'd done is I'd borrowed slippers from the hospital and I bought another pair of shoes. They said, well, do you think those shoes by the WC, do you think those were those shoes? I said, well, no. I said, I think that would be stretching credulity. I'll tell you what, I think it was some sort of fear they might be, which stopped me properly examining them. Anyway, I took the clothes off and I piled them up. Now, I thought, well, actually, what to do about the shoes? Should they be part of the pyre or not? I said, no, they're innocent bystanders. And I set light to it in its magic 3 places. 3. And then I didn't go. And it was more than smouldering now. Oh, and then I was just able to open the case and I fished out Emma's hair. Once I've got Emma's hair, it's okay. Right, out through. And listen, I'll tell you something curious about those cubicles down there. They're numbered. I thought, why are they numbered? Are we on television or something? You know, like, all right, coming number 4. Anyway, nothing seemed to happen. I passed 2 guys. They were having a wee. They didn't see me. Up the stairs, courtesy vehicle still there, but driver gone. But then an elderly Hasidic gentleman with very thick glasses. He paid me no heed. It seems the people at Menzies, they hadn't seen me. And I'm now behind the bureau of change in the croissant shop. At the platform heads, and I creep past this mother and daughter who are just, don't see me because they're looking at the video screen at the platform head there back then. When we come to the alleyway that comes down to platform 2 and 3, 2 middle-aged ladies and a young man in silly shorts, they for sure saw me. I was now sort of quickening my pace with a poop from behind, and it was the electric courtesy vehicle in some sort of pathetic pursuit. And then the alleyway that comes down to platforms 4 and 5, a big black British rail official, he saw me and he blew his whistle. And I was now seen by all the pod people. Christ, this antic had united the pod people. And down the slip road was a Royal Mail van. 2 of the largest sort of postmen getting out of the thing, and the taxi queue. The taxi queue had all seen me. There was a bit of a hue and cry now, and it seemed that everyone thought I was making for the taxi queue, so I kept up this pretense. And then when I got past platform 8, I was going down the row of cars. The Marina was the 9th car down. I thought, actually, I can make it. But then I prayed. And I'll tell you about real prayer. Real prayer is liquid in form, and it comes squirting out of every pore of the body. And this was the prayer: let that not be my old Marina! Because that thing never started first. I got in I was in the Marina, I slammed the door. I thought, I've got a deal riding on this. So I said, so, are you inside me or outside me? And the voice said, you're inside me. But I couldn't get a picture of that. And that really was my undoing. The door was open and I was sort of like in the valley. I was sort of flown from the car. I was able to see the smoke gloriously issuing from the gentleman's toilet back there on platform 1. Remember what Falk said? An unclothed man shocks a crowd. A moment later, if nobody is generous with an overcoat, somebody is collecting handkerchiefs to knot around him. Isn't that sweet? That's how it was in the 20s and the 30s. I don't know what it's like now. It's really quite violent, as a matter of fact. None of that. They're trying to fight me into a mailbag. Was it something about me, maybe? You know, maybe it was Emma's hair. I don't know. But anyway, the last thing I see, Traveller's Rest. And there's the ramp that comes down on the Paddington station at the back. And then I was no longer on Paddington station. I was in the enormous swimming bath of foliage, and I was at the appointed spot, and there was the geezer. He had his back to me, and he was playing golf, planting flowers, and jerking off all at the same time. Anyway, and I tried to get round. It's like my feet had gone so small, and I didn't wrap them. Then I was there facing him. The big eyes! I thought it's Andy Jones, but then the many arms made me think of the Prophet. But I tell you, actually, the guy was most like a frog from the night. That now mutated magnificently into some sort of prince. And it wasn't that he was speaking, but there was emanation. I mean, this I was receiving. This is what I was receiving. In my orange coat. In my orange coat. In my orange coat. In my orange coat. Was he wearing an orange coat? No, he wasn't. In my orange coat. In my orange coat. In my orange coat. It went on and on. It was suddenly, whoop, a head was like a trapdoor at the back of the head. Whoop, it was open. Whoop, whoop, and one at the front as well. Way. And I was voyaging backwards and forwards in time at the same time. Backwards in time. I'm not talking about past lives. Yeah, past lives are going by like fruit gums. I was way back. I was now something examining primordial ice. You know, an onion and a lump of ice, and what are they common? I can tell you, listen, I was examining the botanical formations in primordial ice. I could predict for you your jungle. In my orange coat, turn around. Holding hand number 3 of the many-armed Andy Jones frog prophet, missing a show chief. Whang! All put back together again and resplendently garlanded in a whole drawer load of feathers and Chad there in the luminous green sapling grove, Chad, and no bag, no need of bag now. And in my orange coat, and they decided trying to tell me to look at something. My orange coat, the stones were sort of moving, the stones were sort of stretching and shifting themselves a bit. Not them. In my orange coat, and then I saw it. The thread of marching time. I saw the actual thread of marching time. In my orange coat, I turned around. Coming out from under a table, young mum, young dad, and I recognised that chap. I thought, crap, obviously it's time to perform now. And my hand stretched out, it was not a hand I recognised, a pretty boy Tenringer's hand, I would suppose. Stretched out and touched the thread of marching time. Gave it a twang. And listen, the thread of marching time is elastic. The thread of... And I got it in my orange coat. Well, I thought I've got it. Here it is. Here's the job. This is a commission match. You've got to get hold of the thread of marching time. You've got to pull the fucker down. You've got to get on it. And attempt to pang yourself to the infinitude of absolute mind.
Ken Campbell, The Seekers podcast, was produced and presented by Daisy Campbell and David Bramwell, with kind permission from the Ken Campbell estate. Music was by Horton Jupiter. It was funded by Arts Council England. The disembodied voice of Ken was Jeremy Stockwell.